Void Miner, Trial of the Century, Part 9, Chapter 41, Decision. The Dust Widow drifted in silence above the unknown world, a shadow caught between blue and black. Below them, clouds rolled like a living sea. Above, the stars burned sharp and cold, the only reminder of how far they'd come. Arg sat still for a long time after the words left his mouth. Then we land. They felt heavier than any command he'd ever given, final in a way that couldn't be undone. The hum of the ship was different now, steadier, as if even the widow understood the decision. The panic had filled the cabin in waves was gone, replaced by something quieter. Kara adjusted herself in the berth, one arm across her stomach. She exhaled a low, slow breath. "So that's it then?" He nodded. "That's it." "Directive confirmed," Iona said, her voice low and even. "Initiating pre-descent diagnostics." Arg looked toward the canopy. The atmosphere glowed faintly along the world's rim, a band of light that marked the line between night and day. "We'll follow the Terminator line. You said it's the least turbulent?" "Confirmed. Atmospheric density reduced by 17% along the transition band. Reduced surface heating during entry." He rubbed at the back of his neck. "And the odds?" "Controlled descent, 71%. Total loss, 29. Kara's voice was quiet. "I'll take those odds." Arg almost smiled. "You would." "Warning," Iona added. "Time window for descent burn closes in 8 minutes. "Then let's not waste it," Arg said. He started the pre-burn checklist manually. Even after all these years, even with an AI capable of running everything in a blink, he preferred the feel of it. It kept him grounded, made the moment real. "Thrusters 2 and 4 online," he muttered. "Hydraulic feed stable, reactor flow holding at 51%. "Confirmed," Iona said. "Primary guidance operational, secondary offline." "Won't need it." He worked through the sequence with mechanical precision. Kara watched from her berth, eyes tracing every motion. "You always get calmer right before things go wrong," he grunted. "No sense panicking twice." She smiled faintly. "You know, there's something almost comforting about that." "Don't get used to it." He finished the final diagnostic and glanced back. "You strapped in?" Kara checked her harness. "Tight as it'll go." "Good. When we hit the burn, it's going to feel like we're falling sideways through a storm." "I remember Titan." "Yeah," he said, starting at the instruments. "So do I." The ship groaned softly, the kind of sound that spoke of pressure building, systems flexing under strain. A few seconds later, the lighting flickered as power rerouted to the engines. "Fuel allocation complete," Iona said. "Descent corridor plotted. Target vector follows equatorial band toward Northern Valley system." "Valley," Arg said. "Confirmed. Geological data indicates stable terrain, low seismic activity, and presence of liquid water. Coordinates locked." He gave a slow nod. "Sounds like home, if I believed in that any." Kara leaned her head back. "Don't tempt fate. Every time we think that, we end up somewhere worse." "Somewhere different, at least." Her next breath caught silently. Her hand tightened on the restraint. He turned immediately. "You all right?" She nodded once. "Still early. They're just stronger now." "Fetal heartbeat remains steady," Iona said. "Good," Arg murmured. "He's tougher than we are." Kara smiled faintly. "He'll have to be." Arg turned back to the console. The numbers flickered. Fuel, trajectory, projected heat tolerances, all within marginal lines. Barely. 5 minutes to descent window, Iona said. "Start core warm-up." "Acknowledged." Reactor output increasing to 60%. The deck shivered. The faint vibration ran up through his arms and into his chest. Familiar, almost comforting. He'd felt it 1,000 times before, through landings, storms, battles, but never this far from home. Never with anything on the line. "Arg," Kara said softly. He looked over. "Whatever happens, We've already done what we were meant to. He frowned. Don't start talking like that. I'm serious. The guild, the kids, the hub, all of it. We built something that outlived us before we ever died. He studied her face, the calm behind her exhaustion, the quiet certainty that had carried her through every trial. You're not dying, Kara. Maybe not today, she said. But one of these days, one of us won't make it. I just want you to know, that's all right. He shook his head. Don't talk like that when I'm flying. She smiled faintly. Then land us, Arg, so I can stop. He swallowed hard and turned back to the controls. Yeah, copy that. 3 minutes to December, Iona said. Prep full venting cycle. Ready. Kara drew a long, steadying breath. Feels strange. What does? Knowing this could be the last time we see the stars from up here. He didn't answer right away. The reflection of her face lingered in the canopy, framed by firelight and shadows. Maybe we'll see better ones down there. 2 minutes, Iona said. Arg exhaled. All right, you've got control. Confirming AI flight assist primary. The console dimmed as manual systems disengaged. The ship took on a different rhythm. Smoother, guided by precision of machine logic. Kara felt the shift immediately. I hate that feeling. What feeling? Letting go. He almost smiled. Yeah, me too. 1 minute to December. Recommend final system lock. Arg reached across the controls, keying in the last confirmation code, a sequence that had become muscle memory years ago. Sequence locked, he said. Engage at your discretion, Iona. Confirmed. Burned in 60 seconds. He leaned back, eyes half closed. The cabin lights dimmed further as the Widow's systems realigned for descent. Kara whispered. Arg? Yeah? When we hit atmosphere, she hesitated, voice trembling faintly. If something happens, and He cut her off, sharper than he meant. Nothing's going to happen. But if it does? It won't. Her lips pressed together, but she didn't argue. The hum deepened. He felt it in his bones, that low vibration that said there was no turning back. 30 seconds, Iona said. Arg stared through the glass. The world filled everything now. Clouds like a living ocean. Sunlight breaking across the tops in thin lines of gold. Kara reached for his hand. You've got this. He squeezed her fingers gently. We've got this. 15 seconds. He took one last look at the void beyond the hull. The black sea of stars stretching forever. Then he turned back to the planet and nodded. Let's go home, he said. Burn initiating in 3, 2, 1. The engines ignited. The ship roared. The deck trembled beneath them, the stars vanishing as the planet's curve swallowed their view. Fire began to bloom across the canopy edges, faint at first, then blinding. The roar grew until it filled the ship. Deep, steady, alive. Flame rolled over the hull in orange sheets. Every seam of the Dust Widow groaned like a held breath. Entry velocity nominal, Iona said, voice perfectly calm against the chaos. Structural temperature rising. Outer skin, 900 Kelvin. Arg squinted through the glare, bleeding across the canopy. Hold pitch, 3 degrees. Adjusting. Pitch stabilized. He felt the pressure build, pressing him into the harness. The artificial gravity strained to keep up. A thin halo of vapor streamed from the instrument seams. Condensation boiled away instantly in the heat. Kara's hand gripped the armrest until her knuckles blanched. Sweat traced lines across her temple. You all right? She nodded once. Feels like Titan. All over again. He half smiled. Except this time we're not trying to climb out. We're going down. The ship lurched as a cross-current slammed its starboard side. Warning tones flared across the console. Turbulence increasing. Atmospheric density nominal. Recommend manual stabilization. I've got it. He took the controls as the deck pitched. The horizon spun. Fire wrapped around them in spirals. For a heartbeat, the entire world outside was a single line of flame. Arg! I got it, he counter-thrusted. The ship leveled, sliding back into the corridor Iona had plotted. The tension broke for a breath. Kara exhaled slow. One hand pressed to her abdomen. Contraction interval, 36 minutes, Iona reported. No immediate progression. Kara gave a weak laugh. Nice to know you're keeping score. Helps me focus, Arg said, jaw tight. Altitude 72,000 meters, Iona continued. Outer hull temperature stabilizing, entry corridor holding. The shaking eased. Outside, flame thinned to a dull orange haze. Streaks of light curved past the canopy as the ship slipped deeper into the atmosphere. Kara tilted her head to catch a glimpse through the glass. Beneath the haze, faint outlines of land appeared, greenish shadow through the cloud. There's ground, she breathed. Arg followed her gaze. Looks like ridges. Rivers, maybe. Confirmed, Iona said. Topography consistent with eroded mountain range. Primary valley system extends east to ocean basin. Coordinates within safe descent parameters. Kara whispered. That's where we're going. Arg didn't answer. He stared at the data, wind speeds, density gradients, the pulse of the reactor. The numbers painted a picture of survival, balancing on a knife's edge. Trimmed 4 degrees port, he said. Correction applied. The widow steadied, dropping through another cloud bank. Rain hissed across the hull, turning instantly to steam. The sound was sharp, almost musical. Atmospheric friction decreasing, Iona said. Structural load within limits. Reactor coolant stable. Kara closed her eyes and breathed with the rhythm of the ship. Every shudder matched her pulse. When another contraction rolled through her abdomen, she breathed through it quietly, counting the seconds like a trained pilot counting altitude. Arg glanced at her. Talk to me. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're breathing like somebody who's working for two. He huffed a rough laugh and turned back to the panel. Point taken. Altitude 58,000 meters, Iona said. Velocity decreasing. Prepare for second stage descent. Second stage, he repeated. Copy. He toggled the secondary burn. The Widow's engines flared blue against the red of the re-entry plasma, balancing heat and drag. The ship vibrated again, but the rhythm was controlled this time, like the steady heartbeat of an animal settling into stride. For a moment, they could see the world clearly. Vast green plains, rivers catching sunlight, a spine of distant mountains cutting the horizon. Kara's voice was barely a whisper. Look at that. Ark's throat tightened. Life. Confirmed, Iona replied. Extensive vegetative cover. Infrared mapping indicates settlement clusters. Biometric patterns correspond to previously logged lifeform classes, Elven and Dwarven, per archive correlation. Kara blinked. So it's true. Data consistent with earlier orbital survey, Iona continued. Morphology matches humanoid classification stored in Cultural Mythic Index. Probability of intelligent civilization, 94%. Ark stared at the monitor. Elves and dwarves, he muttered. On a real map? Guess your hammer's going to come in good company, Kara said, smiling faintly despite the strain. He almost laughed. Yeah, maybe it belongs here. Altitude 47,000 meters, Iona said. Atmospheric stability improving, preparing final approach vector. The clouds thinned again. Through the thin white veil below, Ark saw flashes of blue water, the silver thread of a wide river, the dark smear of a forested valley. He whispered, That's our place. Confirmed, adjusting course to intersect valley coordinates. The ship banked gently, dipping its nose toward the planet's dayside. The glow outside faded from fire to gold, then to gray. For the first time, the world looked real. Kara blinked again against tears that she didn't expect. It's beautiful. Don't start crying now, he said quietly. You'll make me nervous. I'm not crying, she lied. Another jolt rocked them. Quick, hard, gone in a heartbeat. A warning light blinked once on Ark's panel. Thermal seam breach, Iona announced. Non-critical. Auto seal engaged. Hold it together, girl, Arg murmured to the ship. The tremor passed. The widow steadied again, gliding through the high air like a wounded bird still determined to fly. Altitude 32,000 meters. Entry complete. Preparing transition to power glide. Arg exhaled. That's halfway. Kara opened her eyes, breathing slow. Halfway to where? He looked out through the canopy. at the blue-green curve of valley stretching far below them. Wherever we're meant to stop. Recommend engaging auxiliary thrusters within 90 seconds, Iona said. Wind pattern unstable ahead. Do it. The thrusters flared. The ship steadied. The glow around the hull finally dimmed to gray mist. The roar eased into a low, continuous hum. Kara relaxed slightly in her harness, chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Arg reached for her hand again, gripping it firmly. We're through the fire. Negative, Iona said. Thermal phase complete. Atmospheric descent ongoing. Altitude 26,000 meters. He gave a tired laugh. See? Through the fire. Outside, the storm clouds broke apart for the first time. Sunlight poured through, pale and diffuse. It caught the river below, one long gleaming ribbon that wound through the valley and disappeared into the haze. Kara's breath caught. It's real. Arg nodded slowly. Yeah, it's real. The light flickered across his face, soft and human. He didn't say the rest, that every minute they spent aloft was one the ship could no longer buy. He could feel it in the hull's tired hum. Approach vector locked, Iona said. Atmospheric stability optimal for controlled landing within 2 standard hours. Then we write it down, he said quietly. The planet stretched wide beneath them. Rivers, forests, and a scatter of unseen dwellings glinting faintly in the light. The hum of descent filled the cabin, deep and steady. Kara whispered, Now what? Our answer was barely a murmur. Now we trust the widow to take us the rest of the way. Outside, the clouds closed behind them, leaving nothing but open sky ahead. Chapter 42. Descent. The dust widow slid out of the upper clouds like a falling ember, wrapped in smoke and thunder. The storm was waiting for them, layer upon layer of churning gray, stacked to the horizon, alive with lightning that forked through the haze. Wind shear increasing, Iona reported, her voice even as the hull screamed. Stabilizers compensating at 42% efficiency. Arg's hands were steady on the yoke, knuckles white, jaw locked. The ship rolled with the currents, its engines howling as Iona fought to keep the descent shallow. Every gauge bled red. Every warning light flickered in rhythm with the thunder. Talk to me, he said. Velocity dropping, altitude 21,000 meters. Pressure differentials within tolerance. Structural integrity 64%. Keep her nose up. If we hit a downdraft. Already compensating. The widow bucked as if insulted, pitching hard left. The restraints jerked across Arg's chest. The light stuttered, throwing everything into flashes of white and shadow. Kara's voice came through the noise, low but steady. Arg, don't fight her. Let Iona fly. I'm not. Another shudder cut him off. He swallowed the rest, easing his grip functionally. All right, Iona. You've got it. Acknowledged. Adjusting pitch. The ship settled, only barely. Outside, rain sheeted across the canopy, boiling into vapor against the heated hull. The clouds pressed close, too close. It felt like descending into the lungs of a living thing, heavy and wet and endless. Kara's breathing was audible now over the dull roar. She pressed a palm to her belly, eyes shut, sweat streaking her cheek. You still with me? Arg called. She nodded without opening her eyes. Just breathing through it. Contraction frequency stable, Iona confirmed. Pulse and oxygen levels within limits. Arg forced a small grin. Hear that? Still within limits. Kara opened one eye, smirking weakly. So is the ship. The smile didn't last. Another bolt of lightning tore through the storm, close enough that static crawled across the hull. For an instant, every display went dark. Dark, silent, except for the groan of metal. Arg's pulse spiked. Iona! Power fluctuation, restoring. The lights blinked back to life. The hum returned, ragged but present. Altitude 17,000 meters, Iona continued as though nothing had happened. Thermal shields intact. Navigation sensors intermittent. Manual visuals only, then, Arg muttered. Outside, the storm thickened again. The windshield glowed faintly with plasma residue, red bleeding into blue. The world beyond was nothing but motion. Kara's voice was calm now, distant. Feels like it's watching us.
The storm?
The planet, she said. Like it knows we're coming. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Not with the tremor in his chest that said she might be right. The deck lurched again, a heavy drop followed by a sudden climb. Loose straps snapped against the bulkheads. A dull thud echoed aft where a panel broke free. Hull flux within margin, Iona said. Descent vector holding. Arg swallowed hard.
Margin's getting thinner by the minute.
Accuracy noted. He gave a humorless laugh.
You were always good at understatements.
Altitude 14,000 meters. Surface topography now within direct scan range. Kara opened her eyes. What do you see? Mountain ranges to the north, large river delta to the south, Central Valley system ahead. Atmospheric conditions remain volatile, electrical activity dense at lower levels.
Can we ride between the layers? Arg asked.
Negative. Turbulence patterns too irregular. Recommend direct penetration through the cloud base. He nodded.
Then take us through.
The widow dove. Lightning surged across the hull again, blue arcs leaping along the outer plating, snapping like claws. The sound was deafening. Kara flinched, but stayed silent. Ark's jaw ached from the tension, every muscle rigid as the ship bucked again and again through invisible walls of air. Velocity 430 meters per second, Iona reported. Heat load dropping, altitude 11,000 meters.
Almost there, he muttered. Come on, girl, just a little further.
The storm thinned without warning. Light broke through, pale, cold, blinding. For the first time, Arg saw the world clearly. The clouds fell away beneath him in great rolling sheets, revealing a landscape vast and green. Mountain shadows along the northern horizon, silver rivers carving through the dark forests, wide valleys gleaming, wet with rain. Kara gasped, a sound of shock and awe all at once. Arg, look! He couldn't speak for a moment. The sight hit him like memory. The same gut ache as watching sunlight hit rock after months of black space. He exhaled slowly.
I see it.
Valley system confirmed, Iona said. Elevating variance within tolerances for landing. Wind speed moderate. Surface thermal reading stable.
That's where we're going?
Arg whispered. Acknowledged. The ship banked gently to port, angling toward the valley floor. Through the canopy, he could see flashes of white where waterfalls plunged from the mountain edges. Mist rose from the forest canopy in coiling towers. Beautiful, Kara said softly.
Let's hope it's friendly, Arg answered.
Unknown. Lifeform signatures consistent with Elven and Dwarven classes detected within regional biosphere. Range 200 kilometers.
Far enough not to worry, he said.
Kara's gaze stayed fixed on the valley. For now. The widow shuddered as wind caught her again. Arg adjusted the attitude controls manually, his instincts working faster than thought. The yoke resisted, hydraulics fighting him, but the ship obeyed, leveling out over the green expanse. Altitude 7,000 meters, beginning final atmospheric deceleration.
Let's keep her high for another few clicks,
he said. Understood. The thunder rolled behind them now, echoing through the higher atmosphere. Ahead, only the quiet sweep of the valley stretched into dawn light. Kara pressed her forehead against the harness. Her voice was low. He's moving again. Arg's eyes flickered toward her.
Pain?
She shook her head. No, just awake. He smiled faintly.
Guess he wants a front row seat.
5,000 meters, Iona said. Wind velocity decreasing. Thermal conditions optimal for controlled descent. Recommend transitioning into autoglide.
Do it.
The engines dropped pitch. The ship's roar softened into a deep, steady rumble. The horizon steadied. The motion less chaotic now, almost peaceful. Kara looked up again, eyes wide. We're really doing it.
Looks that way.
Estimated touchdown in 6 minutes, Iona added. Arg blinked.
Touchdown?
Projected. Descent slope and thrust decay trajectory will intersect valley coordinates. He swallowed, feeling his pulse slow.
Then it's almost over.
Kara nodded, her expression caught between fear and relief. Almost. The clouds ahead began to part, revealing sunlight streaking across the valley floor. Water shimmered into the rivers. Forest glowed deep green, wet and alive. Altitude 3,000 meters, Iona said. The widow trembled again, but it was gentler now, like the last breaths of a storm breaking apart. Ark's hands eased on the controls. He could see the shape of the valley widening beneath him, the curve of the river winding through the fields and stone. He whispered, mostly to himself,
Hold together. Just a little longer.
Kara's hand found his again. She will. Approach vector stable. Altitude 2,000 meters. Preparing final glide sequence. Arg nodded, eyes fixed on the world rushing up to meet them. For the first time since the trials began, he felt something almost like peace. Altitude 2,000 meters, Iona's voice droned through the storm. Crosswinds increasing, secondary stabilizers output declining. The Dust Widow shook so hard the deck plates blurred beneath Arg's boots. Alarms howled. Rain hammered the canopy like gravel.
Hold her steady,
Arg shouted, bracing his arms against the trembling controls. Negative response. Port stabilizer non-functional. Adjusting trim compensation. Failure. The yoke went slack in his hands. The ship rolled hard left, a gut-punching lurch that slammed Kara against her restraints. Metal screamed. Sparks leapt from the overhead. A thin crack rippled across the canopy, crawling like a vein of lightning.
Kara!
I'm here, she gasped. Her voice was tight. Each word dragged through clenched teeth. Still here. Another contraction hit her mid-sentence. The sound that tore from her throat was half roar, half sob. Raw, primal, involuntary. Arg turned instinctively, eyes wide.
Breathe through it.
I am. The widow dropped another 100 meters in a single heartbeat. The pressure slammed Arg forward, harness biting into his chest. The gauges spun. Warning lights bled red across the dash. Altitude 1,500 meters, Iona said, her voice breaking into static. Rate of descent, uncontrolled. Recommend emergency venting to reduce velocity.
Do it,
Arg barked. Panels hissed as the emergency vents blew. Jets of white vapor burst from the belly of the ship. The drag slowed them, but only briefly. Outside, lightning webbed through the clouds. Blue-white arcs seared the sky. The valley floor appeared beneath them at last, a rolling spread of green and stone. Rivers glittering through the mist. Altitude 1,000 meters. Kara let out another cry, louder this time, sharp enough to slice through the storm's thunder. Arg winced, helpless to comfort her, both hands welded to the controls. Then the sound changed. A long, metallic shriek ran the length of the hull, followed by the violent crack of tearing steel. The pressure equalized in an instant. A section of the upper fuselage split open like a wound. Wind screamed through the cabin, ripping at their hair and harness straps. Cold rain flooded in. And Kara's next cry, wordless, pained, was carried out into the sky. It cut through the storm. A single human sound cast into the open valley below. Arg heard it echo through the hull like a siren, swallowed by thunder and distance.
Seal it, he yelled. Iona, seal it!
Unable to comply. Mechanical integrity compromised. Another jolt threw them sideways. The widow banked sharply. Treetops flashed past the canopy. Arg glimpsed the dark blur of mountains to starboard, the pale ribbon of the river rushing straight beneath them.
Too low!
Altitude 600 meters. Retro burn in 3, 2. The burn hit like a hammer. Engines roared, throwing them forward against the restraints. Fire lit the sky behind them as the widow clawed at the air, slowing just enough to survive the fall. Altitude 300 meters. Vector unstable. Kara's eyes were wide now, her breath coming in sharp, panic bursts. Arg!
I know!
He pulled back one last time. The nose lifted. The horizon vanished. Then the world hit them. The first impact tore through the hull, metal buckling struts shattering. The second dragged the ship sideways across the wet earth, gouging a trench through the mud and stone. Trees splintered under the wings. Panels burst free in showers of sparks. Ark's head snapped forward, vision flaring white. He felt the ship slide, grind, twist, then the deafening thud of a final impact. Everything went still except the rain. For a long time, there was only the hiss of steam and the faint groan of cooling metal. Ark blinked through the blood and smoke. The cockpit was tilted, the port side buried deep. Light filtered in through the gaps in the fractured hull. Gray, cold, real.
Kara.
A weak sound answered him. Still breathing. He exhaled once, shaky.
That's all I need.
Primary engines offline, Iona reported faintly. Structural integrity, 43%. Life support on auxiliary reserves. External atmosphere remains breathable. You have survived surface contact. Ark slumped back in his harness, staring at the fractured sky above. Rain spattered his face through the open seam. Somewhere, far beyond the storm's fading rumble, that echo of Kara's cry still hung in the air, carried through the broken hull and out across the valley. No one on the ship could have known who might have heard it. But out there, in the hidden folds of green and stone, something had. The Dust Widow lay still, bent, battered, alive. Smoke drifted upward through the torn plating. The last engine hissed into silence. Systems critical, Iona whispered. Awaiting command input. Ark swallowed, voice raw.
Just hold together.
He closed his eyes, one hand finding Kara's. The rain kept falling through the open wound above them, washing away the last of the fire. They'd made it down. Not safely. Never safely. But alive. And somewhere, in the valley below, the sound of a new life had already begun to draw its first witnesses. Chapter 43. The Watchers. The storm hadn't ended when the sky tore open. Thunder rolled down the valley like a hammer on stone, echoing through every ridge and hollow. Then came something brighter, a light that split the dark clean in two. It wasn't lightning. It moved with purpose, like fire cast by gods. From the watchtower, above the north gate, Thalen saw it first. The young elf leaned into the wind, rain streaming through his hair, his voice sharp against the storm. Valen's breath. Look there. Fire in the sky. Down below, dwarves and elves alike rushed into the square, cloaks snapping, torches sputtering. A dwarven farmer muttered as he crossed himself, voice gravel deep.
By the 9 faces. Skyfire again. Never a good omen.
Then came the sound, a scream of metal drawn across stone, long and terrible. The light flared, trailing flame like a falling forged star, and vanished beyond the eastern ridge. The impact shook the ground. The air hit them like a wave. Dust rose even through the rain. For a long breath, no one moved. Only the hiss of water and ash filled the silence. Then the murmur started. Skyfire. Punishment.
The old songs warned of this. Enough,
a voice commanded. Eldrick, the dwarven elder, stood in the square. The torchlight painted fire through his white beard.
Inside, all of you. The hall holds better ground than fear.
They obeyed, because even in the dark, his word was stone. The council hall smelled of smoke and wet wool. A low fire burned in the pit, light glinting off rough-hewn timbers and stone walls. Elves and dwarves crowded shoulder to shoulder, their fear making them kin for the first time in years. Eldrick slammed his hand down on the table.
Speak, boy. What did you see?
Thalen's eyes were wide, voice trembling but clear. Not a star, not stormlight. It moved like a hawk, wings of metal. It screamed as it fell, and he hesitated. I swear by the river, I heard voices. One of the younger dwarfs snorted.
Voices, is it? You've had too much tavern smoke.
Thalen bristled. I know what I heard.
Silence,
Eldrick growled. His tone carried iron.
Let him finish.
Thalen swallowed. Shouting? Like people? Lost in the wind. A murmur rippled through the crowd. From near the back, a calm voice spoke. One the village always went quiet for. I heard it too. Heads turned. Marith, her gray hair damp against her cheeks, stood in the doorway. Rain glistening on her cloak. Her green eyes clear and steady. From the forge road, she said. The wind carried it. A woman's cry. Eldrick frowned, brow furrowing like stone under pressure.
A cry, you say? What kind?
The kind that brings life, Marith answered. Not fear. Birth. A few gasps cut through the hall. Someone spat into the fire. A babe falling from the heavens. Fools talk. Her reply came smooth as drawn steel. Then a fool knows the sound of a mother better than you do. Silence again. Even the fire popped quietly, respectfully. Eldrick rubbed at his beard.
If it's true.
It is, she said before he could finish. He sighed through his nose.
Then what fell isn't Skyfire alone.
Or something else, Thayland offered silently. Alive or cursed, muttered another. Eldrick's gaze swept the room.
We'll not wait for doom to wander in. If it carries plague or poison.
Or people, Marith cut in. People who need us. He turned on her.
You'd walk into the teeth of a storm chasing a ghost's cry.
I'd walk into worse, she simply said, and take my own feet to blame if I'm wrong. A younger dwarf hissed under his breath.
She's mad.
Her eyes slid to him, sharp as a chisel's edge. Then may madness be kinder than cowardice? The insult cracked like thunder. Even Eldrick had to smooth a grin beneath his beard. At last, he sighed and nodded.
If you go, I go. Thaylen, too. 2 more of the guard.
Thaylen blinked, rain still drying in his hair. Sir, the storm?
The storm's spent its temper,
Eldrick said.
The valley hasn't.
Within minutes, 5 figures were ready. Heavy cloaks, soaked boots, 2 torches. They left through the north gate. Behind them, Stonebrook's lights dimmed to scattered sparks. The air smelled of iron and rain. The sky hung low, bruised with cloud. Thaylen walked first, light-footed even through the muck. Eldrick followed, steady as a cartwheel, axe slung across his back. Marith kept to the middle, her hand on the pouch of herbs and charms she carried for every birth since her youth. For a time, there was only silence, save for the rhythm of boots in mud and the far-off growl of thunder. Then Marith stopped. She turned, head tilted, eyes closing as she listened. Hold. Eldrick frowned.
What now?
She raised a hand. There, beneath the storm. The others listened. A few heartbeats passed. Then a faint sound reached them through the wind. A thin, trembling unknown. A cry. Thalen's hand went to his knife. That's no beast. No, Marith breathed. It's her, still alive. Eldrick looked east, to the faint glow rising from the ridge.
You're certain?
I'd stake the forge on it. He grunted, jaw tightening.
Then we make for the valley. Keep low.
They pressed on faster. Rain drummed against their cloaks. Each roll of thunder seemed to chase them onward. To the dwarfs, it felt like walking through the god's own furnace, air thick with heat and fear. To the elves, like passing through a storm's broken song. When they reached the ridge's edge, the scent hit them. Burnt metal and smoke, sharp as acid on the tongue. There, Thaylen pointed. Light through the trees. At first it shimmered like dawn, pale, uncertain. But then they saw the truth. The forest lay torn, branches charred, ground scorched black. They climbed the last slope, and the valley opened before them. Through the mist glowed a pulse of red, not fire, but the slow heartbeat of dying embers. Eldrick lifted his hand.
Hold fast.
They crouched among the rocks, peering through the rain. The sound of hissing water filled the air. Marith's voice was barely a whisper. "I can still hear her." Eldrick glanced sideways.
You're sure it's not the wind, woman?
She didn't look at him. "Wind doesn't cry out for mercy." Thalen's hand trembled. What if it's a trap?" Marith's reply was soft, certain. "Then it's a trap, with a mother inside." Eldrick groaned under his breath, shifting his axe.
You've a tongue sharper than any blade in my hall.
"And a heart stronger," she said. That earned a single snort of laughter from one of the guards, quickly stifled. Eldrick muttered,
Fine. We go. But quiet. Step light. Eyes wide.
They descended into the valley. Rain softened to mist again. The ground hissed beneath their boots. Still hot in places, the forest floor had turned to ash and glass. The smell of scorched air grew thicker. Sparks drifted upward from the ruin like stars trying to escape the earth. Through the haze loomed a shape, massive, broken, breathing steam. The elder whispered a prayer to the three faces.
May stone guard us from the sky's wrath.
By the time they reached the clearing's edge, dawn had begun to lift its pale veil over the mountains. The first light painted everything silver and ghostly. There it was, the Dust Widow, though none of them knew its name. A beast of iron and fire, fallen and half buried, sighing in its death throes. Marith's breath caught. "By the gods!" Eldrick raised a fist.
Quiet!
They crouched among the blackened roots. Nothing moved but steam. And then a sound. A hiss. Metal shifting. From the heart of the wreck, a seam split open with a shudder, and vapor spilled into the air. A shadow stepped through, tall and heavy, its face hidden behind glass that reflected the rising dawn. Thalen's voice cracked. "It walks!" Eldrick's fingers tightened around its axe.
A creature born of the forge itself.
But Marith didn't move. She watched the figure descend the ramp, her breathing steady despite the fear crawling her spine. The being raised one arm, palm outward, a gesture not of threat, but warning. When it spoke, its voice rolled through the valley like thunder, muffled by metal.
Sta back! No, te has till.
The dwarves flinched, muttering oaths. Eldrick growled.
It speaks like iron kraken.
"Alive," Marith whispered. "Alive enough to warn us." Her words drew silence. Then, from within the wreck, came another sound. A cry, high and broken, unmistakable to her trained ear. She stepped forward before she knew it. Eldrick's hand caught her shoulder.
Don't be a fool.
"She's dying."
We don't know that.
"I do," she said, eyes never leaving the dark shape in the steam. "I know the sound of life, trying to stay alive." He sighed heavily.
You'll get us all killed.
She looked back just once. "Then I'll die doing what I was born to do." And with that, Marith walked toward the storm-born stranger. Steam drifted low across the valley floor, wrapping the crash site in a dim gray shroud. Arg's boots sank into the wet soil as he stepped from the ramp. His visor displayed nothing useful. Radiation nil, atmosphere unbreathable, comms flatlined. The world is quiet, but for a hiss of cooling metal and the dull patter of rain on the hull. Shapes moved through the mist.
Contact,
He muttered, instinctively checking for a weapon he didn't have.
Multiple figures, closing fast.
The movement resolved into 5 silhouettes, shorter, heavier forms alongside 2 tall, slender ones. Torches flickered between them like fireflies, light gleaming against steel helms and wet cloaks. His throat tightened. Not EarthGov, not Helix, not anyone human. He lifted a hand, palm out, voice amplified through the suit.
Stay back. Hull's unstable. No hostiles here.
The sound came out distorted, static-laced, more mechanical than man. The figures froze, but didn't react. One of the stockier shapes barked something guttural and thick. The sound carried even through the storm.
Hold your ground, lads. Keep blades high.
Arg couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakably command. The speaker's accent rolled like gravel, gruff, clipped, built from the throat. Then another voice answered him, soft, melodic, the opposite in every way. Eldrick, hold. The sound she makes is not of war. Arg's visor focused through the steam, resolving a woman's outline stepping ahead of the rest. Slender, her cloak gleaming like oiled leaves, eyes bright as gemstones. She raised her hands, open and unarmed, and spoke again, her voice lilting like a song barely restrained. Sariana Elurain Valin? The vowels were smooth, musical. The translation system didn't even blink. Nothing in his HUD registered the words.
I don't understand you, Arg shouted. Please stay back.
They exchanged looks. The older, bearded one muttered,
Doesn't speak right. Tongue like broken iron.
The woman gestured toward the wreck and said something that cut through the barrier of sound, like a note on a different frequency. Villar? It struck him. Like a whisper, not to his ears, but to his mind. The seed hummed in response. Behind him, Kara screamed. Arg spun toward the hatch. The voice from inside was raw, desperate. He looked back at the strangers.
She's in labor. Do you understand me? She's having a child.
The bearded one stiffened, hand tightening on his axe.
He bellows a battle or birth. I can't tell which.
But the woman, Merith, though he didn't know her name, froze at the sound. She turned towards Eldrick, eyes widening. That cry, it's the same I heard before. The mother fights. Eldrick growled.
You step near that beast, you'll end up ash under its hide.
Her reply came calm and hard. Then I'll burn doing what I was meant for. Before he could stop her, she walked forward. Arg's visor recalibrated, scanning the figure approaching through the haze. No armor, cloth and leather. Simple tools at her belt. Her steps were cautious, but unwavering. He lifted both hands again.
You shouldn't be here. It's dangerous.
Her answer came in that strange melodic language, each syllable carrying conviction like a current beneath calm water. Sariana Villar Thelin Ilaria. His brain sparked, literal synaptic flare. The seed's pulse matched the rhythm of her voice. Words became to fracture, resolve, reassembling behind his eyes. Peace, child, need. The meaning slid into place like gears meshing. He blinked, breath catching.
Wait. You're saying child?
The woman's eyes widened as though she'd felt the same shift. Villar, she said again, clearer this time, and pointed toward the open hatch. He nodded fiercely.
Yes, child. My wife. Inside.
They still didn't share the same words, but the essence had crossed. The seed markers work. Slow, deliberate, bridging the gap syllable by syllable. Eldrick hissed a curse behind her.
By the forge, Mirth. Get back here.
Not until I've seen the mother, she replied without turning. Keep your hammer down and your tongue quiet, Thalen muttered to another guard.
When the storm took her wits. Or gave them, Eldrick said grimly.
She reached the base of the ramp. The heat from the hull shimmered in the air, rising in twisted veils. Up close, the creature before her didn't seem monstrous. The armor was strange, gray, worn, patched with scars, but his stance was almost Illyrian, his fear visible even through the glass. She placed a hand over her heart, then gestured to herself. Marith, he gestured, then mimicked the gesture.
Arg.
The sound meant nothing to her, but she caught the rhythm of introduction and nodded in return. Arg? Behind her, Eldrick's voice rumbled again, low but close enough to carry.
If it turns, I'm splitting it from crown to toe.
Then you'll answer to the gods for interrupting a birth, she called back, never taking her eyes from Arg. For a moment, they stood in stillness, two people from worlds apart, bound by a single sound rising from inside the wreck. Kara cried again, strained but strong. Marith's instincts overrode caution. She reached towards the dark entrance, feeling the heat rush from within. Arg moved aside instantly, motion smooth, deliberate. He pointed inside, voice urgent but pleading.
She needs help, please.
She didn't know the words, but she didn't need to. Some things didn't require translation. Eldrick saw her vanish into the smoke and swore under his breath.
By the stone and storm, she'll be the death of us.
Thalen gripped his torch tighter, eyes wide. It let her pass?
Aye,
Eldrick rumbled.
And I don't like the meaning of that.
The younger dwarf whispered.
What manner of man is he? Not man, Eldrick said. Something older. Look how he carries himself. Like steel remembering it was once flesh.
Rain fell heavier again, dulling the heat. The bearded dwarf lowered his axe, watching the shape inside the light. No one moved to follow. None dared. Inside, the air shimmered. Steam hung thick as breath. Marith's eyes adjusted slowly, shapes emerging from the gloom. Carved walls, panels blinking with faint light, the smell of smoke and metal sharper than any forge. And there, at the center of the chamber, a woman lay across the floor, half propped against a bulkhead, pale, trembling, sweat slicking her brow despite the cold air. Kara Voss, though Marith knew only a face of a mother in peril. The stranger called Arg, knelt beside her, hand shaking as he checked her vitals through the suit's controls. She could see the fear in his movements, the love behind it. He looked up as Marith approached, helmet reflecting the faint light.
She's close,
he said, voice thick.
I can't. She needs help. I don't know.
Her hand came up gently, silencing him, though neither understood the words. It's all right, she said softly. Breathe. She fights, but she'll live. The translation wasn't in sound, but in pulses. The rhythm of tone, the steady cadence of a voice used to calming storms. Something between them resonated again. He didn't hear her words, but he felt them. Marith knelt, opening her satchel, drawing out salves wrapped in linen, a thin blade, clean cloth. By grace and stone, she whispered, ancient habit. Let the breath come steady. Kara moaned, and Marith touched her arms. Peace, Mariel, she said without knowing why, calling her mother in the old tongue of the elves. Arg froze at the sound, realization striking.
Mariel,
he repeated softly, awe flickering in his voice. Marith's eyes rose, startled that he'd echoed her words so perfectly. For the briefest moment, they understood each other. The seed pulsed once more, faint light threading through the edge of Arg's vision, subtle but certain. The marker had finished its work. Marith smiled faintly and turned back to her task. Now, Mother of Stars, she murmured, let's bring your child to light. Outside, the rain began to ease. Eldrick watched the mist curl around the wreck, the glow within softening from fire to amber. He muttered,
If she's right about this, the songs will have new verses before the moon's turn.
Thalen stared into the valley, whispering, And if she's wrong?
Then we'll be burying a fool who died doing right,
Eldrick said quietly. Neither spoke again. The valley lay still. No wind, no thunder. Only the slow, rhythmic sound of rain on metal. And from within, the faint cry of new life fighting to be born. Chapter 44. On the Edge. Dawn crept through the shattered hull, thin and gray, bleeding into the smoke that filled the widow's cabin. Every flicker of light caught the drifting mist of coolant and dust, turning it to ghosts that hung in the air. Meredith steadied herself on the warped bulkhead, squinting against the alien blue light that pulsed from the walls. Symbols glowed and vanished in patterns she couldn't read. She'd entered caves before, mines and ruins, but nothing ever felt this alive. The air itself hummed like a heartbeat. Kara lay, half propped against a slanted wall, one hand pressed to her swollen belly, the other gripping a strap bolted to the bulkhead. Her face was slick with sweat, pale and trembling. She looked up, eyes wide and unfocused. When Meredith spoke, her words were gentle but sure. Peace, sister. Sariana, you are safe. Kara blinked. I don't. She tried to sit up and failed, another contraction racking through her. Arg moved instinctively, dropping beside her, voice breaking with fear.
Breathe. You're okay. Help's here.
Meredith looked between them, the way his hand shook as it brushed her hair back, the pain in his face. She didn't understand the words, but she understood love. That needed no language. She placed her hand over Kara's, steady, grounding. Varen, Drum, Old. The words vibrated in the air, slow and melodic. Kara stilled a little at the tone, even without understanding it. Arg turned toward Meredith.
You can help her, can't you? Please tell me you can.
His voice blurred again, but the marker hum behind his ears sharpened. Somewhere deep in his bones, a thread pulled tight. He heard, not meaning, not yet, but the shape of her reply. Thorim, Villar, Sorin? He repeated the last word without thinking.
Sorin.
Meredith froze. She knew the sound. Wisdom. The hum grew louder. The air between them seemed to vibrate like struck glass. Kara groaned again. Another wave, stronger. And that sound pushed the resonance over the edge. It was as though a curtain tore. The first understanding hit like vertigo. Meredith's next words slipped into Arg's ears clearly, each syllable suddenly forming into meaning. She is close. The child comes soon. Arg jerked upright, staring at her.
You're speaking English.
The seed's influence. The markers burning faintly in his veins, aligning patterns of thought across impossible divides. Behind them, Kara gasped. Arg knelt beside her again, wiping her forehead with his sleeve.
We're going to get through this,
he whispered. Meredith crouched opposite him, pulling the satchel from her belt. Inside were herbs bound with twine, linen wraps, a small curved blade of polished bone, and the silver charm she always carried. The tools of her calling, ancient and simple beside the ship's gleaming ruin. Arg's breath came hard.
I don't have a med kit. Systems are dead, atmosphere barely holding together. How long?
She is strong, Mara said, already checking Kara's pulse. Her skin, the tension in her belly. But the pain comes too fast. The body strains before its time. Arg's jaw clenched.
That started back in the trials. She's been fighting it for hours.
Mara's eyes flickered to him. Unreadable. Trial?
Long story, he said, shaking his head. Not the time.
Then tell me what I need to know. He hesitated. then pulled off his glove. His palm glowed faintly beneath the skin, a shimmer of light tracing the bone.
This, he said, it changed us. Both of us. The child, too, I think.
She stared at the glow, her breath catching.
Magic?
Something older, he said. But if it keeps her alive, I don't care what it's called.
They worked together wordlessly for a time, guided by instinct and necessity. Merith's hands moved with practiced precision, calming Kara through each wave, using her herbs to dull the edge of the pain and ease breathing. Arg tore open supply panels, ripping out tubing and insulation, rigging a portable heat source. When the ship groaned again, he braced one arm over them, shielding them from falling debris. Through it all, Merith kept murmuring, soft, rhythmic words in common, prayers and comfort. The language felt like water against the harsh edges of a dying ship. Arg found himself repeating them quietly after her, his markers translated in his head without thought. When she said,
They're strong,
he echoed,
Child strong.
When she whispered,
Mario safe,
he said,
Kara, safe.
And somehow it worked. The air steadied. Kara's breathing evened out. Hours blurred into a stretch of dim light and rising wind outside. At some point, Thalen's voice echoed faintly from beyond the hatch. Merith answered in common, short and sure.
All is well. Wait there.
Arg sank back on his heels, watching her. She moved like she'd done this 1,000 times. Not a flicker of hesitation, not even when she touched the alien panels glowing under her fingers and the light following her hand like recognition. You're not afraid, he said quietly.
I am,
she admitted, checking Kara's pulse again.
But fear does not help birth come easier.
He almost smiled.
You sound like her.
Merith looked up.
Your wife?
He nodded.
Always calm. Always right in the middle of chaos.
Then she will survive,
Merith said simply. Kara stirred at that, eyes half opening.
Arg?
I'm here.
Her hand reached for him. He caught it, held tight. The pulse between their palms beat in perfect time. For the first time since the crash, he felt something like peace. Outside, the valley brightened. The storm clouds had thinned, leaving streaks of gold and rose splitting across the broken ridges. Through the jagged hole in the hull, sunlight poured in, catching on the wet metal, refracting through coolant vapor until the air itself seemed to glow. Merith looked up, whispering,
A new dawn.
Arg followed her gaze.
Yeah,
He said softly.
it is.
She didn't understand the words, but she caught their meaning. He didn't understand her prayer, but the tone carried its own blessing. Between them, Kara exhaled, not yet at the end, but no longer drowning in pain. The contractions came steady now, measured, bearable. Merith's hands rested on her belly, feeling the life shift beneath. The rhythm was strong, determined.
The child waits,
She said. Arg swallowed hard.
For what?
Merith smiled faintly.
for the sun to rise.
Epilogue. The ship had gone still at last. Every groan of settling metal sounded like a sigh after battle, a body releasing pain. The acidic tang of burned coolant thinned with each breath, replaced by damp air, sneaking through the fractures in the hull. Dawn light, faint and gold, spilled through the cracks, painting the corridor in bands of fire. Kara held the child against her chest. He slept in the crook of her arm, skin warm, heartbeat steady. Each rise of his breath steadied hers. The agony had passed, leaving her hollow but alive, every muscle trembling from the memory of effort. Arg sat opposite, half in shadow, half in the pale wash of morning. His hands were raw, his nails blackened with soot and metal. He hadn't stopped watching her since the birth, terrified that if he blinked, she, or the child might slip away. The quiet felt unreal after the screaming. Marith knelt between them. Her hair clung in damp strands, the gray catching flecks of light. She had washed her hands in what little water remained in her satchel, and now pressed her palms gently along Kara's arms. When she spoke, the language rolled like a hymn.
Sariana el velin milorthair.
Soft radiance bloomed under her fingers. It spread in filaments, seeping through Kara's skin, a glow like starlight through milk. The light didn't burn, it hummed, a vibration that sang against the bones. The bruising along Kara's ribs lightened, cuts sealed, blood dried. The light stitched her whole again, not as machine healing, but as memory made flesh. Arg flinched.
What are you doing to her?
Mara's eyes opened.
Returning what pain took.
She touched Kara's temple, murmuring again. The glow brightened, then ebbed, leaving warmth behind. Kara exhaled, a long, shuddering breath.
It's warm,
she whispered.
Life returning to life,
Mara said. Arg stared. He had seen alien machines rewrite DNA, seed the seed, change matter and mind. But this was gentle. The energy didn't devour, it gave. He reached towards the glow. The hammer, resting near the bulkhead, pulsed once in answer. One deep heartbeat of dull crimson, then went silent.
The stone remembers power,
Marith murmured.
Yeah,
Arg said softly.
it remembers too much.
When the glow faded, Kara sat upright with Mara's help. Sweat was gone, her breathing easy. She looked down at her son, tracing the curve of his tiny hand. The shimmer beneath his skin had dimmed to nothing. Just a child, sleeping.
Thank you,
she said. Mara smiled faintly.
You'll serve life, nothing more.
Arg stood and crossed to the wall where the hammer leaned. In the dawnlight, its surface was dark silver, veins of red running through the head where the seed had fused. It felt impossibly heavy when he lifted it, yet balanced, as if it expected him. Kara watched.
You're keeping it?
He nodded.
Until I figure out what it wants.
Maybe, she said quietly, it's finished wanting.
He paused, then slung the weapon across his back.
Let's hope.
Marith adjusted the blanket around the child, then helped Kara to her feet.
Can you walk? Yes.
Kara's voice was stronger now. Arg moved to her side, ready to help, but she waved him off.
I can carry him.
He looked at the newborn, already bundled close to her heart.
Then I'll carry the rest.
They started down the corridor together. The air grew cooler with every step, the smell of rain stronger through the cracks. When they reached the breach in the hull, light poured through it, almost blinding. For the first time since Titan, Arg saw a true horizon. Mountains cut in blue, forests veiled in mists, a river gleaming far below. The world looked impossibly alive. Kara stopped beside him, holding the child tight.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
he murmured.
And real.
Marith stepped past them, bare feet finding blackened soil outside the ship. She closed her eyes and breathed.
The valley accepts you?
That easy?
Arg asked. Her smile held secrets.
All births are welcome, even those from the sky.
Kara laughed quietly. You hear that, Arg? We're welcomed. He grinned. Fragile, but true.
First time anyone said that to me.
They stood like that a long moment, 3 figures and a newborn, framed by the open wound of the ship. Until Kara turned suddenly, eyes bright.
We should tell them who we are, she said.
He blinked.
Them?
She nodded toward the tree line. Something moved there. Shapes of cloaks and armor. Faint glints of torchlight through the mist. The villagers had returned. Ark's muscles tightened. His hand brushed the hammer strap.
I don't know if they'll...
They will, Kara said. Trust her.
Marith was already walking forward, staff in hand, head bowed slightly in respect. Ark hesitated, then stepped after her.
Guess introductions are in order.
Kara smiled faintly.
Arg Arsten.
He stopped.
What?
She shifted the child's blanket.
That's who we are. Arg and Kara Arsten.
He stared at her.
The weight of it hitting deeper than he expected.
You sure?
Her look silenced him. Tired. Radiant. Absolute.
We've walked the same trials. We share the same path. We might as well share the same name.
Ark swallowed hard.
Kara Arsten.
The words felt strange and right all at once.
Yeah. That sounds right.
Marith glanced back, catching only the tone. But she smiled anyway. Two souls bound by the same road. She turned toward the light and kept walking. By the time they reached the edge of the clearing, the morning light had climbed high enough to burn the fog into ribbons. The villagers waited where the forest met wreckage. Eldrick at the front, axe lowered but ready. Thalen beside him, torch guttering in the damp. The air smelled of smoke and wet iron. The dust widow loomed behind Arg like a wounded beast, hull cracked and steaming. Yet in sunlight, those scars gleamed rather than bled, bright, almost proud. Kara adjusted the blanket around the child. Arg shifted the hammer on his shoulder. Marith walked between them, staff glinting with the faint residue of healing light. The villagers stiffened when the trio stepped from the mist. Eldrick's rough voice rolled across the clearing.
They breathe.
Wonder threaded his tone.
By the three, they're no spirits.
Marith raised her hand.
Peace. They mean no harm.
Arg stepped a pace behind her, the hammer's head glinting dully. He could feel Kara's eyes on him, steady, certain. The weight of all their trials pressed close. Yet for once, it didn't feel like burden. It felt like memory. Eldrick's gaze moved to Kara.
You carry a child?
Kara held the child closer.
Our son?
Her voice carried clear, soft as breath, but unshaken. Around them, dread eased into disbelief. Arg set his hand to his chest.
Arg Arsten.
Then he nodded toward her.
Kara Arsten.
The names drifted through the valley like unfamiliar bells. Marith echoed quietly so all could hear.
Arg Arsten, Kara Arsten, travelers, not ghosts.
Eldrick repeated the syllables, puzzled but respectful.
Not of this sky.
Not of any you know,
Marith answered. The dwarf's eyes softened. He looked to the bundle in Kara's arms.
And his name?
She lowered her gaze to the infant's face, brushed his tiny hand.
Kaelric, she said. Kaelric Arsten.
Arg blinked.
Kaelric?
He deserves a name that belongs to this world, she said, tired but glowing. Strong. New.
Something eased inside him. He smiled, small and certain.
Kaelric Arsten.
The name lingered, the sound of it bright against the hush.
Kaelric,
Marith repeated, tasting it like a prayer.
Child of the sky and stone.
Eldrick lowered his axe completely.
Then the valley will know the name of its first visitors.
Thalen stepped forward, curiosity overtaking fear.
He does not glow. That's all light blinds, Maris said. Kara smiled faintly. He's just a baby.
The tension broke. One by one, elves and dwarves let their shoulders fall. Weapons dropped. The forest's noise returned. Bird song, breeze, the whisper of leaves. Arg exhaled for the first time since the crash. Marith touched his arm.
You may set it down.
He unclipped the hammer and planted it upright in the wet grass. It struck earth with a hollow thud that rolled outward like far thunder. For an instant, red lights crawled along its veins, then went dark. Eldric's eyes widened.
By the three, it breathes.
Once, Arg said quietly. Not anymore. Marith inclined her head.
Then let it rest.
Sunlight poured through the broken canopy, flooding the clearing in pale gold. The hammer lay still, silent yet immense in presence. Marith raised her hand. A tiny flame shimmered above her palm. It drifted down, touching the hammerhead. Ripples of light spilled outward, brushing hull, grass, and faces alike.
Let fire and stone share peace, she whispered.
When the glow faded, even the ship seemed to sigh. Arg watched, awe softening the exhaustion etched into him.
You didn't have to.
It feared being alone, she replied.
Things like that don't feel fear.
Everything that once had purpose fears losing it. He had no answer to that.
Kara stepped beside them, rocking Kaelric. The baby's eyes opened, pale gray flecked with silver, catching the sun. He blinked once, then settled. Marith smiled.
Strong already. Strong, Kara echoed. Kaelric Arsten. Names carry truth, Marith said. He will make his own.
The sun cleared the ridge. Steam rose from the grass, curling like breath. The river far below glittered through mist. The crash no longer looked like ruin. It looked like a beginning. Eldric turned to Marith.
What shall we do with him?
We bring them home.
The council
will listen, she said. They always listen when life begins.
He studied her, then nodded.
So be it.
Thalen looked skyward.
Will the skyfire fall again?
Arg shook his head.
Not if I can help it.
No one questioned him. The answer carried its own authority. They gathered what little the widow had spared. Waterskins, cloth, the last intact tool pack. Marith draped her cloak over Kara's shoulders. The villagers fanned out, clearing a way through the scorched clearing. Arg lingered a moment beside the ship, resting his hand against its battered hull.
Rest easy, girl,
he murmured.
You've earned it.
Then he turned and followed the others. They moved slowly through the trees, sunlight slicing through damp leaves. The smell of sap replaced smoke. Birds darted above. When they crested the ridge, the valley unfurled before them. A river coiling bright through the green. Roofs glinting like slate far below. Kara slowed. Arg offered his arm. She shook her head with a tired smile.
I can manage.
He glanced at Kaelric.
He already looks like trouble.
She smirked.
Gets that from you.
Unfair accusation.
Marith laughed softly.
Then the world will be interesting.
They reached the open meadow. Wind swept up from below, bringing scents of earth and hearth smoke. Stonebrook shimmered ahead, small against the mountains, but alive. Kara paused, looking back towards the clearing. The widow's scarred frame caught the sun, a single spark against the forest.
You think she'll ever fly again?
She asked. Arg followed her gaze.
Doesn't matter,
he said.
We're not leaving.
She smiled faintly.
Didn't think I'd ever hear you say that.
I didn't think I'd ever have a reason to, he replied, brushing Kaelrick's hand. But we do now.
At the ridge top, Meredith stopped and lifted her hands toward the brightening sky. Her voice rose clear and resonant, carrying over the valley and river. By Sereth El-Velin, we stand in Valor beneath Astra. The word shimmered like light itself. Arg didn't know the god she named, but something in the sound settled deep in him. Looked at Kara, at the child, at the land that would now hold them. Kara turned to Meredith. What did you say? It means blessing, Mara said. Then bless him, Kara whispered. Meredith stepped forward, laid her palm lightly atop the infant's head, and smiled. For the first time, she said, her voice soft as dawn, the future belongs to life itself again. The wind caught her words and carried them over the valley, across forest and river, through the chimneys of Stonebrook, over the quiet hull of the Dust Widow gleaming in the sun. For the first time, in a very long age, nothing answered back but birdsong and the rustle of leaves. The end of Void Miner, Trial of the Century.